I stood on the porch of the home I had spent 20 years paying off, staring at locks that no longer accepted my key. My belongings sat in wet trash bags on the lawn. My daughter had just received $33 million, and her first act was to erase me. I thought I had hit rock bottom until I saw the envelope under my windshield wiper. That money did not belong to her. My name is Lorraine Whitaker. I am 57 years old, and until yesterday, I was a mother. Now, I am just a trespasser on the property I spent the last 20 years paying for. The lock on the front door was new. The brass was shiny and unfamiliar against the weathered paint of the frame. I stood on the porch with my suitcase handle digging into my palm while Mrs. Gable from across the street peeked through her blinds. This was not a quiet exit. This was a show. Delaney stood in the doorway. My daughter is 34 years old, but in that moment, she looked like a stranger. She wore a white pantsuit that cost more than the sedan I had parked in the driveway. She was fresh off the cover of every local newspaper in Pittsburgh. The heroic whistleblower who exposed a massive medical fraud scheme and was awarded $33 million by the federal government. She was rich, she was famous, and she was holding her phone up. The camera lens pointed directly at my face. "Delaney, please," I said, my voice cracking. "We can talk about this inside. Just put the phone down for 1 second. I don't understand why you are doing this." She did not lower the phone. She looked at the screen, checking her engagement numbers, ignoring the tears running down the face of the woman who birthed her. "See, guys. This is exactly what I was talking about," Delaney said to her followers, her voice performing a perfect, practiced sadness. Gaslighting, boundary stomping. She just refuses to respect my space. Sometimes you just have to cut the toxicity out to heal. She looked at me then. Her eyes were hard. There was no love in them, only calculation. "You aren't my family anymore," she said. "This is my house." The door slammed shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet suburban afternoon. I dragged my suitcase down the driveway, the wheels catching on every crack in the concrete. I loaded my life into the trunk of my car and drove away because I had nowhere else to go. I parked in the back lot of a 24-hour supermarket. It was the only place where the lights stayed on all night. I reclined the driver's seat and tried to close my eyes, but the silence was too loud. I pulled out my phone. I wanted to text her. I wanted to ask her why, but my messages failed to deliver. Blocked. I tried to log into our joint checking account to see if I had enough for a motel room. Access denied. I tried to check my email. Password changed. In the span of 3 hours, she had systematically deleted me from the digital world. I stared at the dark ceiling of the car. Memories forced their way in. I remembered the weight of the diamond engagement ring I sold to pay for her tuition at Penn State. I remembered the nights I worked the graveyard shift at the insurance firm, filing papers until my fingers bled, just so we could keep the house after her father died. I had given her everything, and she had taken it all. I must have dozed off because I woke up to the sound of rain drumming on the metal roof. It was morning. My neck was stiff. I sat up and looked out the windshield. There was something stuck under the wiper blade. A brown manila envelope was taped there, fighting against the wind and the rain. I opened the door and grabbed it. The paper inside was damp. It was a photocopy of a wire transfer record. The numbers were blurry, but I could make out a notary stamp in the corner. There was a sticky note attached to the front with handwriting I did not recognize. Do you think she really earned that 33 million? I read the note again. My hands started to shake, but for the first time in 24 hours, it was not from grief or fear. I felt a cold heat rising in my chest. The tears stopped. My sadness had found a target. I sat in the driver's seat of my car, listening to the relentless rhythm of the rain against the metal roof. My entire life had been built on a foundation of quiet rules. Do the right thing. Do not make a scene. Pay your debts. After my husband died of a heart attack when I was 40, the mortgage became a living thing in our house, a monster that demanded to be fed every single month. I fed it. I ate toast for dinner and wore shoes until the soles wore through, so the bank would never have a reason to send me a letter printed in red ink. I lived my life making sure I owed nothing to anyone. For 30 years, I worked as a records clerk at Crestwell Mutual Assurance. It was a place designed to crush the spirit. The walls were beige, the carpet was grey, and the employee handbook was thicker than the Bible. My job was to process claims, to find the little technicalities that allowed the company to say no to people who had lost their homes or their health. It was a cold world where compassion was considered a clerical error. I kept my head down. I did my work. I thought that by enduring the coldness of the world, I was earning warmth for my daughter. Delaney was never like me. Even when she was a child, she was a firework. She was brilliant, ambitious, and volatile. I remember her sitting at the kitchen table in high school, her textbooks spread out like a war map. When I make it, "Mum, I am going to buy you a castle," she used to promise, her eyes wide and sincere. "You won't have to look at another insurance claim ever again, I swear." I believed her. That was my sin. I believed the promise because I wanted to believe that my sacrifice meant something. The cracks started appearing 5 years ago when she moved to Phoenix to work for a massive medical device corporation. The distance did not just separate us physically, it severed something else. Her calls became infrequent. She stopped asking about my day. She only called when she needed something. Usually, that something was money. I remember the day I found the credit card bill. I had opened a joint account with her to help her build her credit score, a favor to give her a head start. But when the statement came, the balance was over $8,000. Designer handbags, spa treatments, dinners at steakhouses I could never afford to enter. When I called her, shaking with panic, she did not cry. She did not apologize. She got angry. God, "Mum, you just don't understand how the world works." She snapped at me over the phone. "I need to look the part to get the promotion. It is an investment in my brand. Stop being so small-minded about everything." I paid the bill. I drained my emergency fund to zero because I was terrified that debt would ruin her future. I enabled her. I see that now. When the news broke about the $33 million, I felt a strange mix of nausea and relief. My daughter was the whistleblower. She was the hero who exposed a scheme involving overpriced heart valves. I stood in the break room at Crestwell Mutual and watched her on the television. My co-workers cheered and clapped me on the back. But I looked at Delaney's eyes on the screen. They were cold. There was no fear, no hesitation. She looked at the camera the way a wolf looks at a wounded deer. She bought the mansion in the suburbs and moved me in, claiming it was temporary until I got settled. But from the moment I carried my boxes through the front door, the dynamic was clear. I was not a mother. I was a guest who had overstayed her welcome before she even unpacked. My house. My rules. She told me one night when I tried to rearrange the throw pillows in the living room. Her voice was flat, devoid of affection. I earned this. You just live here. Don't forget that. I looked down at the steering wheel of my car. The envelope on the dashboard seemed to glow in the grey light. People always say that money changes people. I realized now that was a lie. Money does not change you. Money acts like a developer fluid for a photograph. It just reveals what was already there, hiding in the dark. Delaney did not become a monster because she got $33 million. The money just gave her permission to stop pretending she was human. I wiped the rain from my face and held the damp pages up to the light of the dashboard. It was not just a wire transfer receipt. It was a partial settlement statement from a Department of Justice filing involving a Qui Tam lawsuit against a company called Cardiotech Systems. The legal language was dense, but I had spent 30 years reading insurance contracts. I knew how to find the heartbeat in a corpse of paperwork. The name of the whistleblower was redacted with a heavy black bar on the first page. However, the person who had shoved this under my wiper blade had included a photocopy of a supplemental addendum. The redaction on the third page was sloppy. Just below the black ink, the bottom half of a surname was visible. The loops of the letters were unmistakable. Whitaker. I pulled out my phone and typed the case name into the search bar. The articles loaded slowly on the supermarket Wi-Fi. The story was everywhere. A brave whistleblower had exposed a scheme where thousands of cardiac devices were billed as premium models, but were actually cheap imports. The articles described the whistleblower as a diligent records clerk who had discovered the pattern in the internal billing archives. I frowned at the screen. Delaney was never a records clerk. For the last 5 years, she had bragged about being the regional vice president of sales. She managed a team of 40 people. She did not handle raw billing data. She signed off on quarterly projections. I was the records clerk. I was the one who spent 8 hours a day cross-referencing billing codes at Crestwell Mutual. A cold memory surfaced. 6 months ago, I received a generic form letter from Crestwell Mutual. It was a notice of data security incident. It stated that a limited amount of employee data, including social security numbers and home addresses, might have been accessed during a server migration. The letter was a notice of data security incident. It stated that a limited amount of employee data, including social security numbers and home addresses, might have been accessed during a server migration. The letter had come with an offer for 1 year of free credit monitoring. I had thrown it in the trash because I did not think I had anything worth stealing. My fingers flew across the phone screen as I navigated to the IRS web portal. I needed to see my tax transcript. I entered my username. Password incorrect. I tried again. I typed it slowly, watching every character. Password incorrect. I clicked the Forgot Password link. The screen refreshed. To reset your password, please enter the 6-digit code sent to the phone number ending in 4299. My phone number ended in 6100. I stared at the screen until the backlight dimmed. Someone had locked me out of my own existence. I started the car and drove to the First National Bank branch 3 streets away. I did not care that I looked like a homeless woman with wet hair and wrinkled clothes. I walked up to the counter. The teller was a young woman I did not recognize. I need to see the beneficiary history on the Whitaker Joint Savings Account, I said, sliding my driver's license across the marble counter. I believe there has been unauthorized activity. The teller typed for a moment, her face blank. Then she stopped. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. She pushed my license back to me with 2 fingers. I cannot share that information with you. Ma'am, she said. What do you mean? I asked, my voice rising. It is a joint account. My name is on it. I opened it in 1998. You are listed as an authorized user with limited privileges, not an owner, she said. Her tone rehearsed and final. The primary owner removed your administrative access 3 weeks ago. You need the owner's written permission to view history logs. I am the owner. I slammed my hand on the counter. The security guard by the door took a step forward. She is my daughter. Please lower your voice, or I will have to ask you to leave, the teller said. I walked out of the bank, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel to stop my hands from shaking. My phone buzzed in my lap. It was an unknown number with a local area code. I swiped to answer. Hello, hi. Is this Lorraine Whittaker? A man's voice asked. He sounded bored, like he was checking off a list. Yes, I said. Who is this? This is David from Tri-State Mobile Notary? He said. I am just doing my standard follow-up call. I wanted to confirm you received your copies of the quitclaim deed you signed last Tuesday, the one transferring the property at 412 Oak Street to Delaney Whittaker. The air left the car. I could not breathe. I gasped, clutching the phone. I didn't. I never signed a deed. I haven't seen a notary in years. There was a pause on the other end. That's strange, the man said, his voice losing its boredom. I have the document right here in front of me. Lorraine Whittaker. November 12th. Signed in the presence of a notary. You even provided 2 forms of ID. Look, if you are having seller's remorse, that is between you and your daughter. But my seal is valid. He hung up. I sat there as the realization washed over me. It was not just betrayal. It was an erasure. Delaney had not just won a lottery and left me behind. She had taken my identity, my job history, and my name to build her case. The $33 million did not belong to a high-flying executive who blew the whistle. It belonged to a humble records clerk. It belonged to me. And she had stolen it before the check was even printed. I did not go to the police station. Not yet. Instead, I drove straight back to the house on Oak Street. My tires screeched slightly as I pulled up to the curb. Delaney was already outside. She looked like she was posing for a magazine cover. She wore a royal blue dress that screamed authority, and she was flanked by 2 young men in slim-fit suits who looked more like shark pups than lawyers. They stood between us, arms crossed, creating a physical wall. I got out of the car. My hands were empty. I did not have a lawyer. I only had the truth. Delaney? Look at me, I said. My voice steady, despite the pounding in my chest. I know about the notary. I know about the signature. I never signed a deed. She did not flinch. She did not look guilty. She looked bored. One of the shark pups handed her a manila folder. She opened it and held up a document, keeping it just out of my reach. Mother? Please? She sighed, a sound of exaggerated exhaustion, performing for the neighbors watching from their windows. We discussed this. You signed the general power of attorney 6 months ago, right after you were let go from Crestwell. You were unwell. You were confusing the toaster for the radio. Remember, I was not let go, I said, the anger heating my face. I retired. And I never signed power of attorney over to you. Never. She pulled out her phone with her free hand. Really? Because I have video evidence of your mental decline. I kept it to protect you. But if you are going to be difficult, She played a clip. It was me, 3 months ago, sobbing in the kitchen because I had dropped a tray of lasagna. I had been exhausted from a double shift, but the context was gone. The video was edited, zoomed in on my shaking hands and red eyes. It was just me, looking disheveled and hysterical, while her voiceover whispered, "Dealing with my mum's early onset dementia is so hard on the family, but we stay strong." "That is a lie," I whispered, feeling the air leave my lungs. "Show me the original document. If I signed it, I want to see the ink. Hand it to me." She laughed. It was a dry, ugly sound. "The original is with the firm. It is somewhere you can't touch it. Somewhere safe from your outbursts. This isn't about my health." I stepped closer, ignoring the lawyers who tensed up. "This is about the $33 million. You used my name because you didn't have access to the data. You stole my life to get that reward because you were never a whistleblower. You were just a thief." Her face tightened. The mask slipped for a fraction of a second. Her eyes went flat and shark-like. "Don't be jealous. It is pathetic," she snapped, her voice dropping the concerned daughter act. "You just want to leech off my success because you are bitter. You spent your whole life being a nobody, and you can't stand that I am somebody." I looked her in the eye. I needed one slip. Just one. If I signed it, Delaney. Where did we do it? Who was the notary? "It was at the bank branch on 5th Avenue, she said quickly. Too quickly. "Mr. Henderson? We went in the morning." I felt a cold smile touch my lips. "Mr. Henderson retired 4 years ago, and the branch on 5th is a coffee shop now. It has been a coffee shop for 18 months. She stepped back. Her eyes narrowed. She realized she had walked into a wall. She did not apologize. She attacked. "You are confused." She spat. "You are old. Mum, you can't keep up with reality anymore. Your memory is shot. Now get off my property. Keep this up, and I will file for a restraining order. I will have the police drag you away for harassment. Do not test me." She turned and marched back toward the house. The lawyers blocked my path until the heavy oak door clicked shut. The locks engaged with a heavy thud. I walked back to my car. As I passed the large recycling bin by the garage, a flash of blue caught my eye. It was the corner of an envelope sticking out from under a greasy pizza box. I reached in and pulled it out. It was a Crestwell Mutual envelope. Notice of data privacy update. It had been ripped in half, but my name was clearly visible on the address label. I smoothed the crumpled paper against my steering wheel. I was done crying. I was done begging for her to remember that I was her mother. Delaney wanted a war. She thought she was fighting a confused old woman who would fade away into a state-run home. She forgot that I spent 30 years finding lies in paperwork for a living. I would not just tell the truth. I would investigate her like a case. And if I had to drag her down in front of the entire world to get my name back, I would do it. I stopped crying. Crying was a luxury for people who had homes to sleep in. I was sleeping in a sedan, so I replaced my grief with a schedule. I treated my own life like a high-priority claim file that had landed on my desk at Crestwell Mutual. I needed to audit the damage. I organized my evidence on the passenger seat. The crumpled envelope from the windshield. The screenshots of the blocked bank account. The call log from the notary. And the torn data breach notice. I drove to a small brick building in the East End to meet Arthur Klein. He was an elder law attorney with a reputation for being meaner than the banks he sued. His office smelled like stale coffee and old toner. He did not offer me a tissue. He just put on his reading glasses and went through my stack of papers, his finger tracing the timelines I had drawn up. "This isn't just theft," Arthur said, tossing the photocopy of the wire transfer onto his desk. "This is a systematic dismantling of your legal personhood. They aren't just stealing your money. They are stealing your capacity to say no. You are being broken by paperwork. Can we stop them?" I asked. "She has lawyers, expensive ones. Expensive lawyers are just expensive liars." Arthur grunted. "We need hard science. We are going to hire a forensic document examiner to look at that deed. If you didn't sign it, the pen pressure will prove it. And I am sending a preservation letter to her legal team today. It puts them on notice. If they delete one email or shred one receipt from this moment forward, it is a felony." I left his office with a task list. My next stop was a payphone. I did not trust my cell phone anymore. I dialed the direct line for Sarah, a systems administrator at Crestwell Mutual who used to smoke menthols with me on the loading dock. She answered on the second ring. "Sarah." "It's Lorraine," I said, keeping my voice low. "I need you to tell me about the data leak last year. Specifically, I need to know the internal email alias format for the whistleblower complaint that got flagged in the Arizona case." "Lorraine, I thought you retired," Sarah whispered. "Look, I can't give you specifics, but the Department of Justice request referenced an internal user ID. It was LW-REC49. I hung up the phone. My blood ran cold. LW-REC49. That was not Delaney's login. That was my old employee ID. Lorraine Whitaker. Records. Station 49. Delaney had not just used my name, she had used my digital fingerprint to file the claim. I took this new piece of information to a diner downtown to meet Maya Rourke. Maya was an investigative journalist who had written a series of articles exposing a local charity that was embezzling funds. She was young, sharp, and looked like she hadn't slept in a week. I laid it all out for her. The fake deed, the stolen identity, the whistleblower claim made by a sales executive using a records clerk's login. Maya listened without interrupting. She took notes in a small spiral notebook. When I finished, she tapped her pen against the table. "This is ugly," Maya said, "but it fits." The timeline for the payout was unusually fast. I smelled something rotting in that story, but I couldn't find the body. "You are the body. I want to expose her," I said. "I want my house back." "We can get the house back," Maya said, sliding a glossy flyer across the table toward me. "But if you want justice, you need to understand what she's doing next. Look at this." I looked at the flyer. It was an invitation to a black tie gala at the convention center in 10 days. The inaugural gala for the Delaney Whitaker Foundation, celebrating truth and integrity. "She is launching a foundation?" I asked, staring at Delaney's airbrushed face on the card. "She is washing the money," Maya said, her voice hard. "She puts the $33 million into a tax-exempt foundation, pays herself a massive salary as the director, and buys social status. Once she walks across that stage and gets that award, she becomes untouchable. The narrative cements." I stared at the date on the flyer. 10 days. "Then we have to stop her before she walks across the stage," I said. "The courts won't move that fast," Maya warned. "Arthur can file motions, but a judge won't hear this for months." "I don't need a judge," I said, folding the flyer and putting it in my pocket. "She is building a monument to herself using my bricks. If I want to bring her down, I don't need a courtroom." I need to be at that gala. Maya smiled. It was the first time I had seen her look happy. I can get you a press pass, she said. But once you go in, there is no coming back. You have to be ready to burn it all down. I am not afraid of the fire, I said. I lived in it for 20 years, raising her. The war arrived in a thick envelope delivered by a bicycle courier who threw it at my chest before pedalling away. It was a cease and desist order from a law firm that charged more per hour than I used to make in a month. The letter was heavy on legal jargon and bold fonts. It accused me of defamation, harassment, and the theft of proprietary documents. It demanded that I return all materials related to the Whittaker financial portfolio immediately or face federal prosecution. I barely had time to process the threat before my phone rang. It was the Human Resources Director at Crestwell Mutual. Her voice was ice. Lorraine. We received an anonymous complaint this morning, she said. It alleges that you retained access to sensitive client data after your retirement. It claims you are leveraging this data for personal gain. If this investigation finds any merit, your pension will be terminated immediately. I hung up the phone. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. I was shaking with rage. Delaney knew exactly where to hit. She was not just trying to stop me. She was trying to starve me. She knew my pension was the only thing keeping me from total destitution. My phone buzzed again. A text message from a restricted number popped up on the screen. You should disappear before you embarrass yourself. I took a screenshot. Then I drove to an electronics store and bought a front and rear dash cam with cloud storage. I spent the next 2 hours installing it, taping the wires down with surgical precision. I bought a bound notebook and started logging everything: time, location, duration of calls. I was no longer a mother grieving a lost relationship. I was a witness in a case against my own flesh and blood. I met Arthur Klein at his office later that afternoon. He looked more tired than usual. He pushed a file across his desk. It is worse than I thought, Arthur said, taking off his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. She isn't just suing you for silence. She is preparing a petition for emergency guardianship. She is going to argue that your erratic behavior, the alleged theft, and your obsession with her finances are signs of cognitive decline. If the judge grants it, she gets legal control over you. She will be able to sign your name legally. She will validate the deed retroactively. She wants to declare me incompetent, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. She wants to lock me away so her lie stays safe. She wants to erase you. Arthur corrected me. We need something nuclear. We need it now. I left Arthur's office and met Maya Rourke in the back booth of a diner. She looked excited. She slid her laptop open and turned the screen toward me. I dug into the Arizona case. Maya said. The official story is that Delaney was the hero who reported the fraud. But I found a thread on a forum for fired medical device employees. There was a guy named Jonah Briggs. He was a quality control manager at the same company. He got fired 2 days before the whistleblower complaint was filed. And look at this email header. She pointed to a grainy screenshot of a termination email sent to Jonah. CC'd on the email was D. Whittaker, Regional Sales. The subject line read, Internal Security Protocol. Immediate revocation of access. She didn't help him. I whispered, Call him, Maya said, sliding a piece of paper with a phone number on it. I tracked him down. He is working at a hardware store in Tucson. I dialed the number. It rang 4 times. Hello, a man's voice answered, sounding wary. Mr. Briggs? My name is Lorraine Whittaker, I said. I am Delaney Whittaker's mother. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear his breathing hitch. If you are calling to threaten me again. Tell your daughter I don't have anything left to take, Jonah said, his voice cracking with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. I am not with her, I said quickly. She took everything from me, too. I need to know the truth about the $33 million. Did she blow the whistle? Jonah laughed. It was a dark, broken sound. Blow the whistle, Jonah asked. Lady. She didn't blow the whistle. I did. I compiled the evidence. I wrote the report. I brought it to her because I thought she was my friend. I thought she would help me escalate it to the board. What did she do? I asked, gripping the phone. She fired me, Jonah said. She took my file, put her name on the cover, and submitted it to the feds. Then she used the company lawyers to bury me in non-disclosure agreements so tight I can't even tell my wife why I lost my pension. Delaney isn't the whistleblower. She is the cleaner. She swept me into the trash and cashed the check. I lowered the phone. The picture was complete. This was not just a family dispute. My daughter was a predator who had consumed an innocent man's life to feed her ambition. And now, she was coming for mine. We sat in Arthur's office under the hum of the fluorescent lights, dissecting the lie that had stolen my life. Arthur placed a report from the county clerk on the desk. It was a single sheet of paper, but it weighed as much as a confession. We tracked the notary stamp on the deed, Arthur said, tapping the paper with his pen. The commission number belongs to a batch reported stolen from a vehicle break-in 3 months ago. The notary himself was in the hospital recovering from hip surgery on the day you supposedly signed away your home. The stamp is real, but the hand holding it was criminal. Maya rushed into the office a moment later, clutching a laptop. She did not say hello. She just plugged an HDMI cable into the wall monitor. I pulled the security footage from the lobby of the building where the signing allegedly took place. Maya said, her breath coming in short bursts. The resolution is terrible, but look at the woman signing the book. On the screen, a figure appeared. She was wearing a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured her face. She looked like me from a distance. The posture was stooped, the walk hesitant. But then she reached for the pen. Watch the hand, Maya said. The figure on the screen picked up the pen with her left hand and signed the logbook. I don't understand, Arthur said, squinting at the screen. Lorraine, are you left-handed? I said. I have been right-handed my entire life. Delaney is right-handed too, Maya said, looking deflated. I checked her signing photos from the press conference. This might just be a paid actor. I stared at the screen, and a memory from 25 years ago hit me with the force of a physical blow. I saw Delaney in the 4th grade, her right arm encased in a bright pink cast after falling off the monkey bars. She had cried for days because she could not do her homework. Then, with a terrifying determination, she had taught herself to write with her left hand. It became her party trick. She used to do it at dinner to make me laugh. It is not an actor, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It is Delaney. She is ambidextrous. She learned when she was 9. I forgot she could do that. Arthur pulled out a magnifying glass and placed it over the signature on the deed. That explains the pressure points, Arthur said. Look at the tremor in the letters. It looks like someone trying to imitate the shaky hand of an elderly person, but the ink flow is too heavy. It is a caricature of old age. She was mocking you while she robbed you. My phone buzzed on the table. It was an email from Jonah Briggs. The subject line was blank. There was only an audio file attached. "Play it," I said. Arthur turned up the volume on his computer speakers. Static filled the room, followed by the sound of a phone call being recorded. Then, my daughter's voice cut through the air. It was confident and sharp. "Read. Stop worrying about the paper trail." Delaney's voice said, "The old woman is out. The deed is done. Once the foundation launches, we can move the second half of the funds as a consulting fee. The name on the paper doesn't matter. Just make sure the board approves the payout." A male voice responded, smooth and arrogant. "I am taking a huge risk here. Delaney, if the DOJ finds out the whistleblower is splitting the pot with the CFO of the company she investigated, we both go to federal prison for 20 years. They won't find out." Delaney said, "I am the American hero. You are the repentant executive. We are untouchable." The recording ended. The silence in the office was deafening. "Read," Maya said, typing furiously on her laptop. "Read Halverson. He is the chief financial officer of Cardiotech Systems. The very man Delaney was supposed to have exposed." I felt the blood drain from my face. It was not a whistleblowing case. It was a heist. Delaney had conspired with the executive she was investigating. They had staged the fraud report to trigger the federal reward, planning to split the $33 million and launder it through her charity foundation. She had not just stolen my house. She had defrauded the United States government. "This isn't a civil dispute anymore," Arthur said, closing the folder. "This is a conspiracy." I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Pittsburgh looked grey and cold. I realized then that my goal had shifted. I was no longer trying to teach my daughter a lesson about family. I was trying to survive. Delaney had turned herself into a criminal mastermind, and if I did not destroy her cover, she would use that money to bury me under a concrete slab of legal motions and medical lies. "She thinks she is untouchable," I said, turning back to them. But she forgot one thing. She learned how to lie from watching television. I learned how to catch liars by reading the fine print. We stopped reacting and started hunting. The emotional mother who wept on the doorstep was gone. In her place was a woman who understood that the law is not about justice, but about who has the better paperwork. Arthur filed an emergency injunction with the civil court at 9 a.m. He requested an immediate stay on the property transfer, citing elder financial abuse and criminal forgery. It was a legal landmine designed to freeze the asset, so Delaney could not sell the house out from under me while we prepared the main assault. Maya worked the phone in the hallway. She spoke to Jonah Briggs for an hour, her voice low and persuasive. She promised him anonymity in the initial filing and a pro bono defense attorney if he signed a sworn affidavit confirming he was the true author of the fraud report. He was terrified, but he was also broke and angry. By noon, the signed document was in our inbox. I spent the afternoon closing the loop on the digital evidence. I printed the access logs from my compromised email account. I highlighted the IP address that had requested the password reset for my IRS portal. It traced back to a luxury apartment complex in downtown Phoenix, the exact building where Delaney lived before she moved back to Pennsylvania. I matched the timestamps. Every time my identity was used online, Delaney's phone was active in the same geolocation. It was not a coincidence. It was a map of her crime. "This is it," Arthur said, sealing a heavy envelope. "We are filing a complaint under the False Claims Act. We are alleging a fraudulent relator claim. If the Department of Justice realizes they paid the wrong person, and that the person they paid is laundering the money through a charity, they will not just want the money back. They will want blood. I took the package to the post office myself. I mailed it certified. Return receipt requested. As the clerk stamped the label, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was not asking for permission anymore. I was initiating a federal investigation. I walked back to my car in the parking lot. The sun was setting, casting long, dark shadows across the asphalt. I unlocked my door, but before I could get in, a figure stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. It was Delaney. She was not filming. There were no lawyers. She wore a simple black hoodie and sunglasses, trying to look invisible. She moved close to me, invading my personal space until I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the stale scent of anxiety. "You need to stop," she whispered, her voice trembling with a rage she was barely containing. "You have no idea who you are dealing with. Mom. Reed isn't like me. He is dangerous. You are playing with things. That will kill you." I looked at her. I looked at the daughter I had carried, the daughter I had raised, the daughter who had erased me for a bank balance. I felt absolutely nothing. No fear, no love, just a cold, clinical clarity. "You already killed me, the day you changed the locks," I said, my voice steady and quiet. "Ghosts don't get scared. Delaney." She flinched. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She slid it onto the hood of my car. $50,000, she said. "Cash, and a flight to anywhere you want. Just sign the non-disclosure agreement and leave Pittsburgh tonight. Go to Florida. Go to Europe. Just go." I looked at the paper. $50,000. It was a crumb from the feast she had stolen. It was an insult. But I knew I could not let her know I had already mailed the evidence. I needed her to think she still had control. I needed her to feel safe enough to walk onto that stage at the gala. I picked up the paper and pretended to read it, letting my hands shake slightly. I don't know. I stammered, forcing a look of hesitation into my eyes. "I am so tired. Delaney, I just want a place to sleep. Take the money and you can sleep in a 5-star hotel." She pressed, seeing my weakness. "Just go. I will text you the account details. Don't show up at the gala. Don't ruin my night." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the parking garage. I watched her go. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. I met Maya back at the safe house we had set up in her apartment. "Did she take the bait?" Maya asked. "She thinks I am broken," I said, staring at the calendar on the wall. "She thinks $50,000 bought my silence." "Then she is going to be very surprised," Maya said, circling the date of the gala in red marker. 10 days. I said, "She wants a show. We are going to give her one?" The chandeliers at the Pittsburgh Convention Center were brighter than the sun. I stood in the shadows of the ballroom entrance, clutching my purse with both hands to stop them from shaking. I wore my best church suit, the navy blue one with the mended hem. It was the only thing I had left that made me feel like a dignified human being. On the stage, 50 feet away, my daughter stood behind a podium made of glass, clutching a golden trophy that looked like a jagged star. Delaney was crying. They were not real tears, but they glistened enough for the high-definition cameras broadcasting the event to the local news stations. It was hard walking away from the only family I knew. Delaney told the crowd of 500 wealthy donors, her voice trembling perfectly. But I realized that my mother's toxicity was an anchor. I had to cut the rope to save myself. I had to choose truth over blood to become the woman I am today. The room erupted in applause. They were clapping for her bravery. They were cheering for my erasure. I stepped into the aisle. I did not run. I walked. The sound of my sensible heels on the polished floor cut through the fading applause. A cameraman near the front turned his lens toward me. Then another. The room went dead silent. The master of ceremonies, a local news anchor who had interviewed Delaney that morning, froze. He recognized me. I was the monster from the story. Delaney stared at me. For a second, she looked like a child caught stealing candy. But then the mask slid back into place. "Mom?" She sighed into the microphone, her voice dripping with pity. "I didn't think you would come." Security. "Please escort her out gently." I stopped 10 feet from the stage. I did not look at the security guards rushing toward me. I looked her in the eye. "I just have one question." "Delaney," I said. My voice was not loud, but in the cavernous silence of the hall, it carried to the back of the room. "When you forged my name on the deed to my house, did you sign it with your left hand or your right?" A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. Delaney paused. It was a micro-expression, a tiny flicker of calculation. Then she laughed. It was a warm, forgiving sound that made my stomach turn. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am so sorry," Delaney said, shaking her head sadly. "This is exactly what I was talking about. My mother is suffering from severe cognitive decline. I actually filed a petition for emergency guardianship this morning to get her the help she needs. She doesn't know where she is half the time. She thinks people are stealing from her. It is heartbreaking." The crowd's sympathy shifted back to her instantly. I could feel their pity physically, like a heavy blanket suffocating me. I looked like a crazy old woman ranting at a philanthropist. I was losing. Delaney smiled at me, a predator looking at prey. Then the massive LED screen behind Delaney flickered. It went black. A harsh burst of static shrieked through the speakers, making people cover their ears. Maya had done her job. The screen did not come back on, but the audio did. It was loud. It was clear. "The name on the paper doesn't matter." Delaney's voice boomed through the hall, confident and arrogant. "Just make sure the board approves the payout. I am taking a huge risk here." "Delaney," a man's voice answered, Anne's voice. "If the DOJ finds out the whistleblower is splitting the pot with the CFO, we both go to prison." The room gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the air. Delaney turned pale beneath her stage makeup. She grabbed the podium so hard her knuckles turned white. "Turn it off," she screamed, her composure shattering into 1,000 pieces. "That is a deep fake. It is AI. My mother is sick. She is trying to ruin me with fake recordings." It sounded pretty real to me. Someone in the front row muttered. Delaney pointed a shaking finger at me. "Do not listen to her. She stopped. The double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open with a loud crash. 6 men and women in blue windbreakers walked in. They did not look like gala guests. They moved with the synchronized purpose of a wolf pack. The lead officer locked eyes with Delaney, and for the first time in her life, my daughter looked small. The agents moved through the crowd with the heavy, inevitable momentum of a landslide. They were not local police. The gold badges clipped to their belts identified them as federal investigators from the Department of Justice and the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. They did not shout. They simply walked up the stairs to the stage where my daughter stood frozen in her spotlight. "Delaney Whitaker," the lead agent said, his voice cutting through the stunned silence of the ballroom. "We need you to step away from the podium. We have a federal warrant for the seizure of all assets related to the Whitaker Foundation and a warrant for your arrest regarding wire fraud and conspiracy." Delaney looked at the back exit. I saw the impulse twitch in her legs. She wanted to run. She wanted to bolt through the kitchen doors and disappear. But two uniformed officers were already standing there, arms crossed. There was nowhere to go. The $33 million she had thought was a shield had just become the evidence that would bury her. I was escorted into a private green room backstage. A female agent sat across from me with a tape recorder. She did not treat me like a confused old woman. She treated me like the key witness I was. "Mrs. Whitaker. For the record. Did you authorize the transfer of your property?" she asked. "No," I said clearly. "I did not." "Did you authorize the changes to your IRS portal or the creation of the offshore accounts linked to your social security number?" "No." I said, "I did not." "We have the logs," she said, closing her folder. "Your attorney, Mr. Klein, provided everything. We also spoke to Jonah Briggs. He confirmed that he was the source of the anonymous tip you received." I felt a jolt of surprise. "The envelope under my windshield wiper. Jonah sent it." I asked. "He told us he watched you lose your house," the agent said. "He said that Reed Halverson paid off everyone else in the department to stay quiet about the fraud scheme. But Jonah figured you were the only person in the world Delaney couldn't buy." He was right. They led me out of the room 10 minutes later. The gala was over. The guests were gone. Ushered out by security, in the center of the empty ballroom, Delaney was sitting on a folding chair. Her hands were cuffed behind her back. The stage makeup was streaked with sweat and tears, making her look like a melting wax figure. Reed Halverson was already in a patrol car outside. The money trail had been easy to follow once they knew where to look. The charity was a sham, a washing machine for the bribe money she had split with the man she was supposed to be investigating. Delaney looked up and saw me. Her face twisted into a mask of ugly, raw desperation. "You did this," she hissed, pulling against the handcuffs. "You couldn't just let me have it. You were jealous. You destroyed my life because you are bitter." I stopped walking. I looked at the daughter I had sacrificed everything for. I looked at the woman who had left me to sleep in a parking lot. "No, Delaney," I said softly. "You did this. You did it the moment you decided I was disposable." The weeks that followed were a blur of legal victories. The guardianship petition was dismissed with prejudice. The judge called it malicious litigation. My deed was restored. Crestwell Mutual issued a formal apology and reinstated my pension with back pay to avoid a wrongful termination lawsuit. But the real end of the story happened 3 days ago. I was in my kitchen, brewing a pot of coffee. The locks on the front door had been changed back to the old ones. I heard a knock. It was hesitant, weak. I opened the door. Delaney was standing there. She was out on bail, wearing an ankle monitor and a pair of grey sweatpants. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. The arrogance was gone. The shine was gone. She looked small. "Mom," she said, her voice cracking. I don't have anywhere to go. Reed's lawyers aren't returning my calls. The assets are all frozen. I just need a place to crash until the trial. Just for a few days. Please. I can sleep on the couch. She looked at me with those wide eyes, the same ones she used when she was a child asking for a toy. She expected me to move. She expected the mother in me to override the victim. I looked at her. I felt the weight of the last month, the rain on my car roof, the humiliation, the fear. And for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely no fear of her. I did not owe her my safety. No, I said, "Mum, please." She sobbed, stepping forward. "I am your daughter. You made it very clear that we aren't family anymore." I said, "Goodbye. Delaney." I closed the door. I turned the deadbolt. The sound was heavy and final. I walked back to the kitchen and poured my coffee. It tasted perfect. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Guys, that was a wild ride. Right. I really want to know where you are tuning in from today. So drop a comment down below with your city or country. I love reading through them and seeing how far our community reaches. If you enjoyed watching Justice Get Served, please hit that subscribe button for Nora Revenge Stories. Smash that like button and click the hype button to help this video get recommended to more people who need a little satisfaction in their day. See you in the next one.